Bing, 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 bum, ba-dum, bum. Okay. Yo, look at who's back. Oh my gosh, I did not think this guy was gonna come back. This guy makes 7 videos, then disappears for like a whole week, and then comes back and makes more videos. OMG, what is in store for today? Well, if you didn't read the title and you just click on these videos, then good job. Good job. Go ahead, hit like. All right, now look, we're gonna talk about this book today. We're gonna talk about Frankenstein. This is the second Norton Critical Edition. It's by Mary Shelley, if you didn't know. And it was originally published in 1818. The year 1818, okay? It's a very thick boy of a book, but the actual story itself is only about 165-ish pages. In the rest of the book, you have like her bibliography and other little side comments about her life. So, okay, why do I want to talk about Frankenstein today? This is such a random and weird book to want to talk about, especially in our current time. I don't know what it is that makes me want to talk about this book. But every time I look out into the world and I think about people and I think about society as like a whole, I can't stop thinking about this book. This is probably the book that has stuck with me the most since college. Yeah, I read this during college. I actually read it for a class and I read it for fun, and then I was like, oh, wait, there's more here. This is a dense book, right? Of course, I'll say Frankenstein, and I bet most of you know, like, oh yeah, dude, he's talking about like, you know, that monster that people dress up in Halloween for, right? Sure. Yeah, I think media has kind of like phrased it that way. But again, Frankenstein, I think there's like a little play in there. It's a little play on words in a way, right? Because Frankenstein is not the name of the monster. The monster never gets a name, which makes it so much more interesting and adds more fuel to the themes of isolation and what being alienated from society does to a person or a creature. And yeah, although Frankenstein is the last name of the scientist who creates the monster, Victor Frankenstein, right? Depending on how you read it, Victor is the villain of the story, although he's kind of like presented to you as a hero in the sense that, oh yeah, he created life and so on, but he also banished and kind of like neglected this life that he created into a world that hates it, right? So he created something and didn't love it or didn't give it the attention it needed, right? And that's kind of like where the whole monster aspect comes from, because although Frankenstein's monster is not necessarily like the most appealing thing to look at, right? It's like a stitched up various different arms from different corpses and whatnot, but like the idea there is that the monster is only the monster because it does not fit with what we consider humans or people to look like, right? So there you already start talking about themes of prejudice, right? Of people and society judging each other for physical appearances, right? When at the start this monster had no violent tendencies. It didn't know any, it was pretty much like a baby. It was learning things as like a baby would, right? But because it was treated in such a negative fashion, it started kind of like resenting and kind of like building this anger and hatred and swearing revenge towards a Victor Frankenstein, because even its own creator neglected it, kind of like pushed it to the side. And I think The story itself is told through various letters that Victor sends home and so on, because Victor goes away to create the monster. But in doing so, Victor also isolates himself and kind of like goes mad a little bit, a little cuckoo. But one of the best parts of the book that I think is really what sticks with me, and it's kind of like something I've already talked about. I'm trying to talk about this without spoiling too much, but it's the idea of the domestic circle, of the people, right? So there's the idea in present day, right, that there's the family you're born into, but then there's also the family you choose, right? The people that you tend to surround yourself with that make you feel at home, right? And those might not necessarily be your biological family members, right? There might be some that are your neighbor or whatever, right? But she talks about the idea of the domestic circle, the people that are supposed to be there around you to help you grow, to nurture you, to push you to be better, right? And the monster's domestic circle was only Victor Frankenstein, and he's the one that even pushed him out, right? So it tackles the idea of what would happen to someone if they're no longer welcomed. What would happen to a person when they're no longer loved or cared for? And I know I know it's a kind of like a corny little like thing to talk about, right? But many of you might say like, oh yeah, like I could live without being loved or cared for, but like really, can you? Can you go a whole year without talking to anyone or anyone talking to you? What would that do to you? I think it's a really interesting topic, an idea to explore, because fortunately I've been fortunate enough to have a very good domestic circle, although small, but still there, right? I don't know what would happen if I didn't have that. I don't know if I would have the motivation to go and do the things I've done in life, right? So, yeah. Frankenstein. It's a dense read. I recommend it, but maybe wait till you're a little bit older, okay? Or maybe read it now and you'll be like, oh, well, okay, that's a cool gothic story, yeah! And then read it again later on in life when you're older, and then you'll be like, whoa, man, that was deep! Bite.